Now let's look at the second stage of aerobic respiration, which is after oxygen is present, what happens to the pyruvate molecules. When oxygen is present, the molecule of pyruvate eventually enters the region which is called as the mitochondria. The mitochondria is an organelle. Now, within an organelle, there are various folds and various sections of it. We're not going to go into a whole lot of depth in there. Just remember that before pyruvate can enter this organelle, it has to be converted into an active molecule, and that active molecule is called as acetyl-CoA. So pyruvate converts into acetyl-CoA and then eventually enters the Krebs cycle. At this stage, a very important step takes place, and that is one of the carbon dioxide is released. Now, a pyruvate is a 3-carbon molecule, acetyl-CoA is a 2-carbon molecule. Now you can see does the carbon dioxide molecule will be released. It will be released when out of the 2-carbon forms acetyl-CoA, the last carbon comes out as carbon dioxide. And that's the carbon dioxide that you can imagine when we breathe out. Now, the acetyl-CoA enters this a cyclic form, which is the Krebs cycle. And over here, more of these carbons will be converted to carbon dioxide, and that is again the waste. The Krebs cycle is shown over here. You can see it's a very continuous cyclic form. A lot of things are happening while this step carries on, and the most important step that is carried on is electrons are going to be released once again, lots of different times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lots of different stages. And in every stage that electrons are being released, it is again picked up by these 2 molecules. What they have in common are they are both electron carriers. So there are 2 kinds of electron carriers, NAD and FAT. And their task is to take this electron to the 3rd step of this entire process. Now, sometimes a few ATP molecules are released during this cycle, and I just want you to remember that there's only actually one step only where this ATP is formed, and I'm going to cancel these 2 words, pretty big words for a Bio 101 class. We'll just remember that one ATP is released at this stage. Now, this is a sort of like a net gain of all of these carbon dioxide. It's more about accountability. If any of you were really very concerned about accountability as to how many carbon dioxides are released and how many ATPs comes in, then I would strongly recommend to read a little bit more. But for a 101 Bio 101 class, which is mainly a survey, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of depth. Even if you've understood this far, you've done a great task, because respiration is a very complicated process. Now, at the end of respiration, what is going to happen is all of these electrons are going to be transferred to a 3rd step of reaction. In the 3rd step, which is also called as sometimes as the big energy payoff, is because at this step, a lot of movement of electrons are going on. The electron keeps on jumping from the inner to the outer membranes within the mitochondria. If I was to draw a mitochondria like this, it would have membranes and folds in this form. So within these membranes, it keeps on floating back and forth, certain electrons back and forth in this region. If you can visualize that, there's a nice animation that I would like you to really watch on this. Now, the folds of the membranes are mainly giving you more surface area, but around this movement of the electrons, lots of hydrogen ions help move from one compartment to the other, and a very important enzyme, which is more like a shaft, helps to release energy. This energy is then trapped in the formation of ATP. Electron transfer chain is more like a bucket brigade. So if there was a big fire at the end of a tunnel or a building, and they had 10 firefighters standing in the way. Just transferring electrons is like transferring a water bucket from one person to the other. And in this entire process, at the end, one of the molecules accepts the bucket. In this case, would be the ATP, and will be formed in this process. But in a real scenario, it's actually oxygen that's accepting the hydrogen to form water. But imagine in a bucket brigade scenario, if you were to transport the water, eventually you would blow down the fire. So that's the series of steps that are carried on in the third part of respiration. The third part of respiration eventually will yield the highest number of ATPs. And if all the ATPs were counted from the beginning to the end, you get a total of 36 ATP. That's a lot of ATPs versus just the 2 ATP that was actually released in the step of glycolysis. To make it even more understanding to you, I can say if you take a big ball and drop it from a 5-story building, you can see the impact, and all the energy would be wasted. Now, if you were to drop the ball in a slope or through steps, then each step would trap a little bit of energy for the cell, so you have the maximum energy stored by breakdown of one glucose molecule. And that is the purpose of aerobic respiration. Another interesting thing is the mitochondria, which I just mentioned in this previous image over here. Mitochondria once was considered to be a primitive bacteria, and it was so efficient to make energy. It was a powerhouse of the cell. Eventually, the eukaryotic cell just trapped the mitochondria within it and kept it as part of an evolutionary process. Now let's look at another stage in which oxygen is not present. What happens when oxygen